These players have lost a tremendous amount of value. I know your first reaction with every one of these guys is, okay, let me cut them off my roster. Let me sell them for anything I can get. Where in reality, in a few of these instances, yeah, you should cut maybe Cadarius Toney. Or maybe, yeah, you can go through, you can try to sell Ezekiel Elliott. But not every one of these guys you should be trying to get rid of ASAP. I want to dive into the players that have lost the most fantasy football value through the first 2 weeks. And I want to tell you if you should maybe get them off, sell them for whatever you can get, or possibly buy low on a few of these guys. And I know y'all are going to hate me for saying this, but before we get into it, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you want to be a member of the flock. And of course, I'm going to continue to live stream every single day answering your fantasy football questions. So make sure you hit the bell next to that subscribe button so you're able to come out to these live streams. Lastly, this video is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Over there on Underdog Fantasy, of course, you can check out a ton of these cool player props. You saw us do over 700 drafts on Underdog this year, and they have best ball in-season drafts as well. So we are also going to be getting in extra fantasy football leagues, extra drafts on the live stream during the season. So if you want to go check out any of those cool player props, if you want to get in a draft with us, make sure you go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. They'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar at $200, and you'll get our 2022 fantasy football rankings. But let's dive into our first player here, Cadarius Toney. I mean, obviously with Toney here, this was a wide receiver that was this close to being cut from your roster after week 1. I mean, after week 1, we saw that this new coaching staff with Brian Dable here, they're like, yeah, I mean, we saw what Cadarius Toney did as a rookie. We saw the one game he had with 189 receiving yards. We saw the fact that he had 2.2 yards per route run. But you know what? I don't care. This is not my guy. This is a new regime. He doesn't fit our offense. He played a whopping seven snaps week 1. And we said if we got another week like that, this is a player that I'm fine moving off our roster. And that's exactly what we have. We have Cadarius Toney bumping it up to 29 snaps, but the man finished with a final stat line of 3 targets, 2 receptions, and a whopping 0 receiving yards. So I'm not going to fault you at all if you want to go through, drop Cadarius Toney. Y'all know we made those waiver wire videos yesterday talking about some intriguing pickups. Like if we could go get an exciting rookie, if we could go drop Cadarius Toney and pick up Garrett Wilson, pick up Jahan Dotson, I would definitely make that move ASAP. Now, if you're playing in a deeper format, if you're in a dynasty league, maybe you have to keep Toney. Maybe you have to just hope that he gets shipped out from the New York Giants, but in reality, if you're in a shallow redraft league, I think it's time to cut bait. Now, our next guy is going to be the running back for the Dallas Cowboys here with Ezekiel Elliott. So if you're looking at the final stat lines here for the Dallas Cowboys, you're just looking at the raw fantasy points you had between Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. You would assume that Tony Pollard's taken over. Tony Pollard coming away with damn near 20 points this past week, where if you're looking at Ezekiel Elliott, you had a whopping 5.5, 6. I mean, it was disgusting. And what's upsetting is this wasn't a blowout loss. I would assume that if Tony Pollard is walking away with the majority of production in this backfield, oh, well, maybe this was a game against the Cincinnati Bengals where they had no Dak Prescott. They lost by multiple touchdowns. So Tony Pollard was in there in obvious passing down situations. They pulled Ezekiel in the second. No, they won this game. They led the majority of this game. So when the Dallas Cowboys are leading, we would naturally assume that's when Ezekiel Elliott gets out there. That's when Ezekiel Elliott has that large workload. But no, you had a total 15 carries for Ezekiel Elliott, 9 for Tony Pollard. You had 7 targets for Tony Pollard and 2 targets for Ezekiel Elliott. So this led to Tony Pollard having almost a 50-50 split in raw opportunities compared to Zeke. It's time to hit the panic button. I mean, we told y'all not to draft him coming into the season because you looked at a running back that was second in the NFL in active career touches, only behind Mark freaking Ingram. And he had lost a step every single season, decreasing his rushing yards per game since his rookie year. This is a continued trend. Tony Pollard increasing his role, Ezekiel Elliott shrinking his own role. I don't know. Go down to the comment section if you don't think that Ezekiel Elliott is someone you should be trading away right now. Please, of course, if you have any questions, leave them down there in the comments. I'm going to be answering at least 200 comments on this video. But let's go down to our next player here. Actually, we're not going to go to Kyle Pitts just yet. We'll save him for the end. Instead, let's go to Travis Etienne. I mean, with Etienne, we talked about him so much. I don't feel the need to dive too much further into him. This is a running back that had 26 snaps this past week compared to James Robinson at 45. Similar to what we had in week 1, but I was sitting here going, okay, well, maybe it was because Travis Etienne fumbled going into half, and that's why in week 1 there was such a contrast with the way that these running backs were used. But no, it continued over to week 2 here. You had 23 carries for James Robinson, 9 carries for Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne wasn't just getting every target out of the backfield either. So I think that we would go through, move Etienne if you can get a similar price of what you paid. It's very difficult though, and I need to take my L on this. I mean, I thought that Etienne could have been an intriguing buy low pickup after a disappointing week 1. But I don't know if this opportunity is changing anytime soon. Keep in mind, it's his second NFL game ever. But it is not encouraging in the slightest to see that James Robinson's just out here dominating in touches. But now let's go over to what we believed was the worst offense in the NFL. Let's go over to Seattle, where DK Metcalf has done absolutely nothing so far. DK Metcalf, a whopping 7 targets week 1. I mean, that's great. 7 receptions. You're like, oh, DK Metcalf had 7 receptions. Historically speaking, what is this, a 790 line with the touchdown that you have come to expect with DK? No, with the new quarterback, this new 7 reception week for DK Metcalf gave you 36 receiving yards and 0 touchdowns. Week 2, yet again, 6 targets for DK Metcalf, where you had a whopping 4 receptions, 35 receiving yards. And what's funny to see in this week is this team trailed the entire game. You had 30 pass attempts here from Geno Smith, and you had 9 receptions, 107 receiving yards from Tyler Lockett. I mean, we talked about the fact that Tyler Lockett out-targeted DK Metcalf in the games where Geno Smith started a year ago. I don't know what we can even do here with DK Metcalf outside of sit there and cry that you drafted him, because it is a very gross spot where we know that he has a very high ceiling on a week-to-week basis. But the issue is, can we ever figure out when that's going to be? So if you're drafting like on Underdog or something and it's a best ball format where his spike weeks will automatically fall into your starting lineup, then sure, maybe you can get excited about Metcalf. But in a regular redraft league, good luck figuring out when you're going to start him. And a player that I'm willing to just go through and almost cut all our bait on is going to be Darnell Mooney. With Darnell Mooney, I wanted to give him the pass after the rainy game. I mean, after the rainy game in Chicago against the 49ers week 1, we're like, yeah, I mean, Darnell Mooney only had 3 targets, 1 reception, 8 receiving yards, but maybe he can still be fine. Maybe it was just the weather. Well, you had Justin Fields coming out against the Green Bay Packers, with everybody watching and just embarrassing himself to no end. Justin Fields, this game, completed 7 passes, had 70 total passing yards. I've never seen something this gross before. You've had 2 weeks so far from the Chicago Bears where they haven't had 200 passing yards total. They were averaging less than 100 passing yards a contest. I don't want to say it can be this bad the entire season, but at the same time, I don't want to say it can get that much better, because if Justin Fields goes out there and doubles the passing volume we've seen through the first 2 weeks here, he's still not getting to 200 passing yards a week. Gross for Darnell Mooney. He's worth the roster spot, but if you add like Garrett Wilson on your waiver wire, honestly, I'd rather have Wilson. And at the same time, with someone like Cole Kmet, who's also in this offense, Cole Kmet, who has yet to have a reception, I think you have to completely move off of him. And now our next guy, Tom Brady. This is a quarterback that's obviously going to go down as the best NFL player ever, yada, yada, yada. But we have people down there in the comment section very worried about Brady. Now, I understand why. He has averaged about 200 passing yards a week, 201 passing yards a week so far through the first 2. He's also only had 2 passing touchdowns. And for a quarterback that last year was in discussions to be MVP, that was leading the NFL in passing, yada, 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 this is incredibly disappointing. But at the same time, I don't want to overreact. you have to look at the context of these games. Week 1, you had a game against the Dallas Cowboys defense, which we know is going to be an above average defense, where you had a banged up Julio Jones, we had Godwin leaving at the very beginning, where Dallas put up a whopping 3 points total. Dallas put up 3 total points. So you just didn't have to see that passing volume come from Tom Brady. Of course, I mean, if your defense holds the opponent to 3 points, you're just going to run the ball. You're just going to play keep away, or at least that's what I would do. Of course, I'm not nearly smart enough to be an offensive coordinator, not nearly smart enough to be a head coach. But week 2, also, it was a very unique situation where we know that Tom Brady, historically speaking, very much struggles against the New Orleans Saints. At least he has during his time in Tampa. On top of this, Mike Evans has historically struggled against the New Orleans Saints. On top of this, look at his passing weapons in this game. You had Mike Evans limited in practice all week. We didn't even know if he was going to play with the calf. Julio Jones missed this game. Chris Godwin missed this game. Russell Gage was banged up. Leonard Fournette was banged up. Every weapon that Tom Brady had in the passing game was either out or limited in this game itself. Plus the bad matchup. I don't want to sit here and make too many excuses for him, but long term, if you have a healthy Julio, if you have a healthy Evans, if you have a healthy Chris Godwin, if you're not going up against the New Orleans Saints, I think that he's going to be fine. Now, this upcoming week against the Packers, it's not going to be great for Brady if Mike Evans ends up missing. I doubt we get Godwin back against the Packers. Julio's probably still going to be somewhat hurt. And this is a Packers defense that just allowed 70 passing yards to Justin Fields. Okay, but let's go do our next player over here. Let's go over to Rashaad Penny. Rashaad Penny, we talked about selling him after week 1. I mean, I think that the reasons were clear. It's potentially the worst offense in the NFL, potentially the worst offensive line in the NFL. With Rashaad Penny, he's not going to catch passes. With Rashaad Penny, he has an injury history. With Rashaad Penny, they have Kenneth Walker, who they clearly drafted to be the future of this franchise. Not only were all those red flags very true, very accurate, but maybe it's even worse than we expected. Because I was worried about Rashaad Penny maybe being in a 50-50 backfield in a very bad offense with Kenneth Walker. But Travis Homer, 22 snaps this week. Rashaad Penny, 20 snaps. Kenneth Walker, 12. DJ Dallas got involved as well. You had 49 potential snaps here for the Seattle Seahawks, and you had Rashaad Penny playing 20 of them. We've seen running backs be hyper-productive in horrendous offenses before. We remember James Robinson back in 2020 or David Montgomery that same season. But what did those running backs need to be hyper-productive and to be great fantasy assets if they were in piss-poor offenses? You need every single touch out of your backfield. You need a role in the receiving game. Rashaad Penny has neither. I don't want to tell you to cut Rashaad Penny. You just shouldn't have drafted him. You should have sold him high if you did draft him after week 1. Because it's about to get very, very ugly. I don't know when you could ever start him. But someone that we did tell you to buy low on after week 1, someone that I liked drafting this year and has disappointed everyone, has been one of the biggest early round draft busts in all of fantasy football this season, Kyle Pitts. With Kyle Pitts, after week 1, we were looking at a receiver that had a very tough matchup. I mean, if we remember, going up against the New Orleans Saints, the same defense that just pretty much shut down Tom Brady, you had Lattimore going up against Pitts. It was not a good matchup, but at the same time, Kyle Pitts, he went out there, he had 7 targets. He led the team, alongside Drake London in his total targets. So I was like, okay, well, clear buy low spot. And expecting it was going to be another tough matchup going up against the Los Angeles Rams. Not only was it a tough matchup, but you had Drake London with 12 freaking targets. Drake London looking like he is submitting himself as the top option in Atlanta here, the top option in the receiving game. Only 25 total pass attempts for Marcus Mariota. So Drake London getting this, he soaked up almost half of the passing volume. And what's funny to see is Kyle Pitts led this team in routes run, not just at the tight end position. Kyle Pitts, among everyone, had 29 routes run. That was more than anybody else in Atlanta. So for Drake London to come out here and to dominate the way he did, for Kyle Pitts to yet again be unstartable, where this is now back-to-back weeks where he's had 2 receptions in 19 receiving yards. Of course, it's hard to sit here and not panic on Pitts. At the same time, I'm not going to lie to you. I think that they have been 2 very bad matchups. I didn't draft Kyle Pitts last year, and I got very lucky that he didn't score touchdowns. but he had the volume last year. He put up arguably the best tight end season of all time after being the best tight end prospect of all time. If you look at him historically compared to wide receivers that dominated the way he did at incredibly young age, he literally looks like he's Mike Evans, Juju, Odell. I mean, going and looking at Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. That's the kind of season you had from Kyle Pitts from a raw volume perspective at 21 years old as a pass catcher. I still think he's an elite athlete, an elite prospect, had an elite rookie season. 2 tough matchups so far through the first 2 weeks. It's difficult to sit here and not panic. It's very hard for me to come out yet again, look you in the eyes and say, you know what? I'm probably buying Kyle Pitts, but we're going to be buying this dip as it continues to go down, and you can continue to make fun of me down there in the comment section. But that's all I got for y'all. Of course, if you did not already, go down there, drop a like on this video. Go to the comment section. Feel free to ask me any question. Feel free to tell me I'm an idiot for doubling down on Kyle Pitts. And also subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell next to the subscribe button if you want to be able to come out to our live streams, which we're doing every single day until the end of the year. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day, and I hope we get to see you in the live stream tonight.